right, next to last chapter of Genesis. We'll wrap it up next week. Last week we focused on Ephraim and Manasseh, Joseph's two sons, who will become two tribes of their own. And now this is really like the last time the children of Israel are sons. And from now on, when you talk about these, they'll be tribes. So this is like Jacob's last. So he's dying. He's 147 years old. Very old to today's standards, but in those times, the lifespans is starting to shrink and getting down to what they are now. And he calls all 12 of his sons, and we'll go briefly over what he said on each one, and then what happened to that tribe. All right. Okay. Genesis 49. And Jacob called unto his sons and said, Gather yourselves together, that I might tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. Gather yourselves together, and hear ye sons of Jacob, and hearken unto Israel your father. All right, so the first one he goes to is Reuben. All right, verse 3 and 4. Reuben is the firstborn. Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity, and the excellency of power. Unstable as water, thou shalt not excel, because thou wentest up into thy father's bed, then defilest thou it, he went up to my couch. So a brief thing on Reuben, he was the firstborn, or Jacob lived all those years, and then he finally married Rachel, and then started having children almost immediately. He had these four, I would almost say, almost a year apart, so these four grew up together, but Reuben is the firstborn, so he has the birthright. But last week, we talked about almost every incident in Genesis, the firstborn wasn't chosen. And Reuben wasn't chosen or wasn't left out because of, just randomness. It was because of what he did. Jacob had four wives, Rachel, who was dead, Leah, who was Reuben's mother, and then each of them had a handmaiden. And Reuben went in unto one of Jacob's wives. So I don't know, technically, she might not have been biologically related to him, but I guess it would almost be like dating your stepmother if your father got married again. So it was inappropriate, and it was enough that cost Reuben his birthright. We talked about last week, the flesh goes after things right away. So he wanted her, he went after it right away, and then now he suffered the ramifications the rest of his life, and forfeited his right as the heir and leader of the tribe of the children of Israel. Now we'll point a note, on a positive note, Reuben was one of the two that really, of the 10 brothers who didn't want to take Joseph out. Judah was the one who suggested we don't kill him, and Reuben was the one who said, let's put him in a pit and we'll come get him later. And Reuben, it said, was going to rescue him, that he was taking, so it almost shows like he had the right heart, but he was didn't have the leadership, or he didn't have the strength. He should have said, I'm the firstborn, not killing our brother. We're not going to do this. We beat him around a little bit. Father's going to be mad, but we'll just deal with it. But he didn't have the nerve to do that. So that's what happens to Reuben. And he becomes one of the, we're going to get one more marker here. Eventually, he becomes the first, we'll just put a 1 here, of the kingdom of Israel. Remember, that will split Israel and Judah. And if you also remember, excuse me, when right before they went to the promised land, 2.5 of the tribes wanted to stay on the east side, and they said, we'll fight for you first, but we want this land. It was Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh. So they stayed on this side of the Jordan. All right. The next of all 12 sons, this is the only 2 that are grouped together, and it's interesting to talk about their fate. Simeon and Levi, verses 5 through 7. Simeon and Levi are brethren. Instruments of cruelty are in their habitations. I think this is, picture Jacob, he's calling all the sons, they're all gathered together. I imagine they're going, is this the last thing our father's going to say over us? O my soul, come not thou into their secret, unto their assembly in mine honor. Be not thou united, for in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they dig down a wall. Cursed be their anger, for it was fierce, and their wrath, for it was cruel. I will divide them in Judah and scatter them in Israel. Got a lot of information here and try to just compact and hit the head points. So Simeon and Levi almost seem to be cursed. You know what happened? We talked about it. Shechem, when the Shechem's son raped Dinah, you know, it was bad, but at least he wanted to be with her and he wanted to marry her. So he was kind of reconciling. They said, okay, but if you do this, you've got to circumcise yourself. And they made this strong sacrifice of agreement. And then while they're recovering, they go in and kill them all. You know, it was really treacherous. And even at the end, their father rebukes him and said, "You've made a stench in the land." And the last thing they said, well, would you have us treat our sister like a whore? So there was no repentance, it seemed like, what they did. Now, it wasn't right what they did to Dinah, but she seemed to be going to get a husband and a family, and instead, they're going to be, he wiped that out through murder. So anyway, so those two are cursed. Now, we'll talk about, ironically, and kind of how God works things together. 2 of the 12 sons of Israel do not have a tribe. One is Joseph. We had Joseph because his is replaced with both of his sons. And the other is Levi. And Simeon, he has a tribe within Judah, but it's almost like he never has a permanent land. When it lists the judges, at the end of Joshua, it lists all the cities for the priests will live. And each tribe, it lists of the city of Judah, like so-and-so as a city of refuge. But Simeon is left out. And it's almost like, I think that was part of their curse. They're like a scatterer, and they never had a permanent land. For one thing, they were encircled inside of Judah. It's called like a landlocked country that's surrounded by one country. So if you're surrounded by Judah, then basically that country is your country. So they kind of just wandered around and remained that way. In contrast, Levi, although he was also cursed, redeemed himself because of an act in Exodus. And let's read it briefly. Exodus 32, 26 to 69. After Moses had come down from the mountain and saw the golden calf, and of course all that going on, and then let's just read it now, 26 to 29. We'll go ahead and start with 25. And when Moses saw that the people were naked, for Aaron had made them naked unto their shame among their enemies, then Moses stood in the gate of the camp and said, "Who is on the Lord's side? Let him come to me." And all the sons of Levi gathered themselves together unto him. Levi is also the tribe that Moses and Aaron came from. And he said unto them, "Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, put every man his sword by his side, and go in and out from gate to gate throughout the camp, and slay every man his brother, and every man his companion, and every man his neighbor." And the children of Levi did according to the word of Moses, and there fell of the people that day about 3,000 men. For Moses had said, "Consecrate yourselves today to the Lord, even every man upon his son and upon his brother, that he may bestow upon you a blessing this day." And as a result of that action, the tribe of Levi was used as the priestly tribe. So all the instructions of the priests all throughout the rest of the Old Testament is from the tribe of Levi. So even though he did a horrible act and was cursed by Jacob, he kind of redeemed himself from it. So these two kind of went in different directions, and Simeon is basically a tribe that's hardly heard of. But Simeon again was a part of Israel, one of the 10 tribes, a part of Israel. Next, Judah. Judah and Joseph both have, most of these are 1 or 2 verses. Judah and Joseph are both 5 verses. These are 2 of the main ones. And now Judah, he seemed to take the role spiritually. It just really seems like he's just progressed since this events with Joseph. First, he suggested Joseph not be killed but kidnapped. He's almost like the leader all throughout the process of them going back to Egypt and standing before this unknown man who turned out to be their brother. And also Judah's the one who makes the final plea. Look, take me. You just can't take my brother Benjamin. So, and then the Lord is going to do great things in this tribe. Verses 8 to 12. Judah, thou art here whom thy brethren shall praise. Thy hand shall be in the neck of thine enemies. Thy father's children shall bow down before thee. Remember, all the kings come from Judah. Judah is a lion's whelp from the prey, my son. Thou art gone up, he stooped down, he couched as a lion, as an old lion, who shall rouse him up? The scepter, that's the kingdom, shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver, for between his feet until Shiloh comes, and to him shall the gathering of the people be. Binding his foal into the vine, and his ass's colt into the choicest vine, he washed his garments in wine, and his clothes in the blood of grapes. His eyes shall be red with wine, and his teeth white with milk. So a strong blessing over Judah. Remember, it says the scepter will not depart from him. When David's kingdom is set up, David is a descendant of Judah. I think it's like 10 generations from Judah to David. The kingdom, when it splits up, there's the northern tribes of Israel, but Judah, get a different color here, will have its own, will be a part of its own nation, Judah. Israel will have many kings in different dynasties. Judah will have one dynasty, all in the line of King David. Now, Zedekiah was the last king of Judah, and Babylon took him to captivity, but Jesus is descended through King David, so in that sense, that means the scepter will not depart. His line of kings will go on forever, all through the tribe of Judah, lion of the tribe of Judah. So Judah is kind of the spiritual leader, and when the time comes for the divided kingdom, many hundred years from now, he will be one of the two that will have his own nation and will even keep his name. So the other 10 tribes kept the name of Israel, their father, and these two kept the name of Judah. So Judah has taken a spiritual role, and I even wondered, did he even exceed Joseph in these latter years? Because we don't really hear much more. When Joseph and his brothers and his family are reunited, he's 40 years old, and Joseph dies at 110. You don't really hear much about Joseph, only when Jacob dies, which is a few years later. So just something interesting to think about, how Judah began to take a greater role. And these are the first 4 sons of Leah. And she had 2 more, Zebulun and Issachar. So let's read about them briefly. Zebulun shall dwell at the haven of the sea, and he shall be for a haven of ships, and his border shall be into Zidon. Should have looked into that. I believe that probably means where his tribe will be, near a body of water. Not much about him. He's the youngest of Leah's 6. I think he might be the next to youngest, next to Joseph and Benjamin. And I just found one of the judges, not well-known judges, Elon, was descended from Zebulun. When slightly older him, I don't know why they listed Zebulun before Issachar, but so he's age-wise, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4, down here 5, and then he's youngest here, who's 6 is first, and then the 5th born son, Issachar, whatever you want to pronounce it. And just a brief 1 verse on Issachar, or 2 verses, 14 and 15. Oops, pick that up. Issachar is as strong as his couching down between 2 burdens. He saw the rest was good in the land, that it was pleasant, and bowed his shoulder to bear, and became a servant unto tribute. All right, Issachar, with his name, I didn't look into the Hebrew origin, but you see his grandfather's name there. I was wondering maybe somehow some kind of ancient language or Hebrew variant to Isaac, named after him like that. Like I said, he's one of Leah's sons, and the Tola, the judge, another not well-known judge. When it gives a section of, we have long sections on Samson and Gideon, then it just lists this judge reigned for so-and-so. Tola was descended from Zebulun. So there's the first 6 children. Leah, he pronounces blessing or his prophecy over them first, and then we move into the next one. An interesting thing we'll hear about Dan. A lot of times in the Old Testament, you'll read Dan to Beersheba. I think Dan was the farthest northern place, and Beersheba was the farthest south. So that's like saying, I guess, from Maine to California, well, the east, of course, now you would say Alaska to Hawaii. Okay, verse 16 to 18. Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a serpent by the way, an adder in the path, that biteth the horse heels, so that the rider shall fall backwards. I have waited for thy salvation, O Lord. First of all, thinking of some famous Danites, the judge Samson. Samson was descended from the tribe of Dan. Here's the interesting thing. He is also the only son of Jacob not mentioned in the final roll call in Revelation. One time as I was reading my Bible through the year, I listed it. Every time they would list the 12 tribes of Israel, I would write it down. And sometimes they'd leave one out, like in Judges. I think one time Simeon's not listed. And there's many lists all throughout the book. But Revelation is the last place. And let's go to Revelation real quick. You remember when it talks about the 144,000, 12 from each tribe? All right, let's see who is left out of here. We'll go from the beginning to the end of Genesis back to our original course, Revelation. Of the tribe of Judah were sealed 12,000, right? So we're going to do a little check off here. Of the tribe of Judah, 12,000. Check. Of the tribe of Reuben were sealed 12,000. Check. Of the tribe of Gad were sealed 12,000. Check. Of the tribe of Simeon, even though not known Simeon was made it, were sealed 12,000. Check. Of the tribe of Levi were sealed 12,000. So by saying Levi, it seems like he's pulled back into the original position. Levi was no longer listed. Joseph's two sons took his place, but Levi is now listed again. Of the tribe of Issachar, 12,000. Check. Of the tribe of Zebulun were sealed 12,000. Check. Of the tribe of Joseph, now I want to notice here, I remember Joseph had two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. What they do here, they only list one of those two, and Joseph takes the other place. So of the tribe of Joseph, we've got to check. Of the tribe of Benjamin, check. We're sealed 12,000. All right, so that one, did I skip a verse? I think I skipped one.
Asher 6.
Yeah, I think I skipped that. Yeah, I skipped that. Verse 6. Of the tribe of Asher were sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Naphtali, 12,000. And of the tribe of Manasseh. So who's the only one left out there? Dan. Where are you, Dan? Why is that? There's several theories. One theory is the Antichrist came from Dan. That's some things we could look more into, but it's just interesting to know in the final list of the children of Israel, Dan is not listed in that list of Revelation. So I'm interested to see. But we're on Genesis now, not Revelation. But that was just since we're going over each son, I was going to give something interesting about each one. All right, next is Gad. Another one we just don't hear a whole lot about. More verse 19. Gad, a troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last. So just one little mention. He's the oldest of two sons of Rachel's handmaid Bilhah. Then there's Asher. Anyone? Bunky Daisy, Ellen, Daisy's husband. That's his real first name, yep. Asher. I guess he was named after the tribe, I assume, or either named after someone in his family who was named after that. Verse 20, out of Asher his bread shall be fat, and he shall yield royal dainties. So not a lot on Asher there either. And this was the second son of Bilhah, Rachel's maid. Then we have Naphtali. Verse 21, Naphtali is a hind let loose, he giveth goodly words. And just note a point about Naphtali. Barak the judge, the one, you remember when he was about to conquer, you might remember the story, and he said, I won't do it unless Deborah goes before us. Mm-hmm. And so he said, all right, but she's going to get the credit for this. Well, Barak was descended from Naphtali. And in Matthew 4:13, jump in the New Testament here, when Jesus' ministry is just beginning. And most of the Lord's ministry was in Galilee. And leaving Nazareth, he came and dwelt in Capernaum, which is upon the seacoast on the borders of Zebulun and Naphtali. So those two kind of shared that future area where almost 2,000 years later, Jesus would come and minister to. So that's kind of a point to point out. Now, as we come to Joseph, like Judah, this is one, I forgot also to list their tribes. So in the future kingdom, in the divided kingdom, Zebulun, he'll be part of Israel. Issachar, Dan will be a tribe of Israel. Gad will be our nation of Israel. Asher will be the nation of Israel. Naphtali, the nation of Israel. Joseph, both of his sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, will be the tribe of Israel. All right, Joseph, even Joseph, which this includes him, but Benjamin, we haven't gotten him yet. All right, now, Joseph's prophecy. 22 to 26, so like Judah, Joseph has 5 full verses because of his accomplishments in greatness and faithfulness. Jacob says to Joseph, Joseph is a fruitful bow, even a fruitful bow by a well, whose branches run over the wall. The archers have sorely grieved him and shot at him and hated him. Sure, this is referring to all the things that was done to Joseph, not only by his brothers, but falsely put in prison. But his bow abode in strength, and the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty God of Jacob. From thence is the shepherd of the stone of Israel, even by the God of thy father, who shall help thee, and by the Almighty, who shall bless thee with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that lieth under, blessings of the breast and of the womb. The blessings of thy father have prevailed above thy blessings of my progenitors unto the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. They shall be on the head of Joseph, and on the crown of the head of him that was separate from his brethren. So Jacob is really giving him a strong praise, lifted up. So of all the brothers, you showed yourself the most faithful, and the Lord blessed him. And as a result, we talked about last week, Joseph's 2 sons became tribes of their own. So Joseph he got 2 tribes in a sense. We're not going to talk about this week. We talked about the tribes on the eastern side, Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh. So that means one half of Manasseh was on the eastern side of the Jordan. The other half of Manasseh was on the western side. And some even suggest that Manasseh's 2 sons became separate. One settled here, one settled there. So in a sense, Joseph would have 3 tribes if you look at it that way. So he was blessed for his faithfulness. And like most of the others, he's in the tribe of Israel. And then finally, the last one, Benjamin, verse 27, the youngest. Benjamin shall raven as a wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil. He's the other son of Joseph. Unlike all these others, when the kingdom of Israel is divided, 10 nations become nation of Israel. Judah and Benjamin will become the tribe of Judah. Now back to Simeon. Simeon is landlocked again inside of Judah, so it's almost like, how can you not be a part of the nation of Judah when you're surrounded by a tribe that is that kind? It's almost like, there was you had a tribe in the middle of the United States and it's saying you're part of Canada. It just makes it sound like they just scattered and settled somewhere else. But he was the youngest son, back to Benjamin. Of the 12 sons, a few chapters back, it lists all their children as they go into Egypt and does a census. Benjamin had the most. He had 10 sons. So as they're starting, his tribe is the beginning. It's the largest, but if you remember, his tribe was almost wiped out. The last story of the book of Judges is when the Levite had a concubine, and they went in and killed her, and then the Levite cut her in 12 pieces and sent it to all 12 of the tribes. So we've got to take out the city, and all 11 out of the tribe kings. Benjamin didn't come because it was a city in Benjamin, and they said, we're not going to fight against our brothers. So they battled each other, and Benjamin put up a good fight, but in the end they were almost completely wiped out, and almost wiped out from the tribe of Israel, just a few hundred left. And so a couple hundred years later or so, when Saul's called, it makes it sound like, they were the smallest tribe, and that was a result of that. But eventually Benjamin and Judah become one nation. Now there are two famous people from this tribe, both with the same name. Anyone know who that be? I just name one a minute ago. Saul and Saul. King Saul was a Benjamin, and Saul of Tarsus. I'm a Benjamite, a descendant of Benjamin. Paul makes a quote talking that. So there's the 12. They're all gathered before Jacob right before his death. And then he closes out with this prophecy in 28 to 33. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is that their father spake unto them and blessed them, every one according to his blessing he blessed him. And he charged them and said to them, I am to be gathered unto my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, which is before Mamre in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought with the field of Ephron the Hittite for a possession of a burying place. There they buried Abraham and Sarah his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah his wife, and there I buried Leah. The purchase of the field and of the cave that is therein was from the children of Heth. And when Jacob had made an end of commanding his sons, he gathered up his feet into his bed, and yielded up the ghost, and was gathered into his people, or of course died. So point of note here, he gives his farewell. From now on, we have the the split of the tribes. But this is like last time, the 12 sons are together, like I said, and he gives his burial instructions. So in that cave, Abraham and Sarah, I guess, are buried side by side, Isaac and Rebekah. And even though Rachel seemed to be his favorite wife in life, she died on the road and they buried her near what will become Bethlehem. Leah, his first wife, the one he had his first children and the most of his children, that's who Jacob is buried with at the end. All right, that'll do it next week. We'll wrap up Genesis. We'll look at the death of Jacob, the aftermath. I'll propose a theory, something to think about of the events that happened with Joseph. And we'll also look at the date of the Exodus, how long it was between Jacob and those going down to Egypt and when they left the promised land. How many years was it? All right, anyone have comments, questions?